Hey guys, this is Mitch with FinePoint CGI, and today we're going to talk about how to create an Android module for Godot. So we're going to go through the process of setting up our Android project. We're going to go through the process of connecting all of our signals and connecting all of our functions, and then we're going to bring it into Godot, set up our build process, set up our plugins, ability to connect over to our Android system. And then finally, we're going to round it out with a quick little sharing example where I'm going to share some text to my Twitter application. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. Hey guys, before we get started with the tutorial, I just wanted to let you guys know I don't really mention it in my tutorial, but please make sure you download and install Android Studio. It's pretty much the only reason why this tutorial actually works, so make sure you pull it down and use it. If you guys need any help, you guys can run through my exporting to Android tutorial, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. That's going to be something you're going to need to do before you can start building modules for Android. With that being said, guys, let's get back to the video. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up Android Studio. So I'm going to go ahead and open that real quick. And you will see that it already has a project open for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on File, New, and we're going to go ahead and make a new project. So we'll go ahead and click on that. And you'll see that it's going to ask me what kind of activity I want to make. So I'm going to say no activity because I don't need it to do a special activity or anything like that. I'm going to be making a plugin, so it doesn't need to have anything crazy like that. So go ahead and click next. And in our name, I'm going to say hello world. Our package name is going to be hello world. Our save location is going to be here. In my case, I'm going to choose Java. You can choose Cloten if you would like, but I don't know Cloten very well, so I'm going to stick with Java. And we'll go ahead and make the API 23. I'm doing that because that's an API level that I know works pretty well. Technically, I think you can get all the way down to 21 and it should be okay, but I'm going to make it 23 and we'll go from there. So we'll go ahead and click finish. And it looks like it actually made a new project. So I'll bring this over here. I don't know why it did that. I figured that it was going to do its own thing, but that's okay. I'll just drag this out here and you'll see that we get our Android tip of the day. So we'll go ahead and close that. And then for us to make this into an add-on, we actually need to go ahead and tell the Android project that it's an add-on, not an actual project. So what we can do is we can come down to our app. We can go into our manifest here. We can click on our Android manifest. Now our Android manifest is very important because it allows us to tell it what type of application it is. Now, we need to add in some small amounts of data here. So in this case, we are an application and that's fine. We do need to close our application here. So we'll go ahead and close that. And then we will go ahead and close that like that. So that way we can have some of our data here. And we don't need this at all. And what we need to do is we need to pass in some metadata. So we'll go meta-data, and we will pass in our Android :name, and we'll make that equal to org.godotengine.plugin v1 whatever the name of our plugin is. In our case, it's hello world. So I'll go ahead and grab this and name it hello world. And I'm going to go ahead and give this capital W. So we'll go hello world and capital H. And then we need to go ahead and hit enter and say Android :value is equal to com dot, and I'm going to go ahead and use example dot hello world dot, and we need to actually tell it what the name of our class is going to be, what the first class we're going to have, what that name is. Now you can see here we haven't quite created it yet, right? So let's go ahead and create that. So I'll right click new Java class and I will call it hello world. Perfect. So now we'll go back to our Android manifest and we will add that in here. So dot hello world. And now our Android manifest is pretty much set up. So we'll go ahead and kill this by doing that, and that will do it for us. And I believe I actually need to put this at the front like that. There we go. So now what we need to do is we need to tell this to be a plugin and not an application. And we also need to implement our Godot plugin, right? So that way we can actually use the Godot libraries. So we can do that via our Gradle script. So let's go over to our Gradle scripts and let's go ahead and find our module Hello World application here. And from here, we can actually add in our dependencies and things like that. So what we can do is we can come in here and say plugins ID com Android application. This isn't an application. This is actually a library, right? So we can just type library. Simple enough, right? And now, according to our Android system, we are now a library and not an application, which is perfect. So now we need to go ahead and pull down our Godot version plugin that we're using. So let me go ahead and open up Brave here and let me go to Godot. And we will go ahead and download the plugin we're looking for. So we'll come in here. So you'll see we have 342 and we will scroll down here until we see export template AAR library for Android plugin standard. Now, if you want to support Mono C#, you can also download the Mono C# one, and you'd be able to directly interact with C# libraries as well, or at least you'd be able to interact with it directly from C# instead of doing this funky Godot translation layer that a lot of times we have to do. Now, in my case, I'm going to do the standard, but you guys can do whichever one you'd like. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I will download it to my machine. All right, so what we need to do now that we have this downloaded is we need to go ahead and put it into our project here. Now, previously you were able to just import it via file open module or open AAR file, but unfortunately they've kind of made that more complicated now. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and right click our Gradle script, go ahead and show in Explorer, and that's going to go ahead and open up our app folder location. Then we'll go ahead and open up our libs folder here, and then we need to go out to our downloads folder where we have our downloaded file here, our little AAR. We'll go ahead and copy that, paste it in here. I will click on it, and let's go ahead and rename it. So get rid of that one. In your guys' case, you probably won't have that issue, but in my case, I do. So now that we have that, we need to go ahead and tell our dependencies to actually include our library here. So we'll go ahead and hit enter and type compile only. And we will go ahead and compile in our plugin here. So we will say compile only file tree dir : quote libs, and I believe it's called libs. Let me take a look at the folder. It is called libs, you can see right here. So we'll say libs comma include colon, and then we'll go ahead and pass in our Godot project. So we'll just grab this, Control A, Control C, and we will pass this in here. So now when we hit Control S, we need to sync our Gradle files here. You'll see it says, hey, Gradle files have changed since our last project sync, so we need to sync it. So cool, no problem. Let's sync that. And what it's going to do is it's going to build our project and kind of create our linking libraries here. So now from here, we should be able to implement our Godot plugin. So let's go out to Hello World and let's say extends Godot. And it may need us to grab the class. There we go. So you can see if I just right click and import the class, you can see it automatically pulled in my import. And now the class is being extended by the Godot plugin. Sweet. That's some of the work done, so that's cool. So if we right click on this, show context actions, and go ahead and implement our methods, you'll see that it says, hey, you need to implement our get plugin. So we'll go ahead and do that. And we don't need this JetBeans. It automatically pulls it in, but we don't need it. And you will see that it says, hey, you need to create a constructor. So create your constructor. And now we have that as well. So it kind of just does it for us, which is really cool. Now, we also need to do a little bit more additional coding before we can just start pulling stuff together. First, get plugin name. We need to return some kind of plugin name. So let's hit quote and let's give it a plugin name. So in my case, I'm going to say hello world, and I don't want to put any spaces in this name because it's the name that Godot is going to use for your plugin. So you don't want to give it a weird name or anything like that. Just call it whatever your class is, preferably without any spaces. Now we need to also put in some other function calls here. So I'm going to say at non-null, at override. And you will see that when I do at override, I can actually take a good look at all of the methods that Godot allows for me to override. So this is really useful. So some of the things that we should override is get plugin signals. We should probably do get plugin methods if we can find it. I'm not seeing that one, so we might, oh, I do see it, it's right there. And I think that's probably all we'll need for right now. I mean, technically we could probably pull a few more of these, but we might come back to this and see. So we'll go ahead and hit OK, and you'll see that it implements those for us automatically. So now if I just kind of drag these out like that, there we go. Now you can see that there is a strike through of here. So I'm not sure if they're removing that method eventually and they're going to come up with a different method, but as of right now, this is the way that I know how to do this. So, you know, we'll go from there. Now, what we can do is basically we can create methods in here for our Godot to read. So we'll say public string get hello. And we'll go ahead and tell it to just return, quote, hello world. Simple enough, right? And then what we can do is we can also do what's called signals inside of our plugin as well. And what we can do is we can just go ahead and create a signal and then emit that signal. So what we can do is we can just create another function down here that says public void get hello signal. And we'll say this takes in a string S. That way we can actually just return our string back to our project, right? Simple enough, right? Something that's simple that we can kind of mess with. So how can we emit a signal back? So what we can do is we can say emit signal. And then we can name it. So we'll say test signal. And we'll go ahead and comma. From here, this is basically the arguments that we're trying to send back to our project. So basically, this is all the data that we'd want to send back. Things that the user might use or might need or might want from that signal. Okay, so we can just pass back our S, and that'll be easy enough. Now, this isn't all we have to do to get our stuff to work. We need to register our signals. We need to register our methods. So what we can do is we can come into our methods here and we can just say return arrays dot as list, and then we can pass in our different methods. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pass get hello, and I'm going to pass in get hello signal here. So we'll do quote get hello signal, and simple enough. Now for the plugin signals, it's a little bit more complicated. Okay, first we need to do a set, and we need to set our array type, like our signal object that we're returning. We need to actually set it properly. So we'll say signal info space signals is equal to new array set, and that should do it for us. Now we need to go ahead and add a signal to this. So signals.add, and we need to pass in our signal information, okay? So we're creating a signal here. Much like how we're emitting that signal down here, we need to actually create it to tell Godot that this signal exists. So what we can do is we can say add new signal info, and we can name it, in our case, test signal. And then we need to tell Godot what it should expect when it gets something back, right? So we can do comma, and we need to tell it what kind of class it can expect. So in our case, string.class. And we're basically passing back that class reference saying this is what we're going to return to our Godot instance, if that makes sense. So now from here, we basically are done. I know that this might seem really simple and it just seems, not that exciting, but it really is this simple to get everything to work. So if we go ahead and we click on the little build icon, you'll see that, hey, first, library project cannot set application ID, and that's my fault. So when you change your project over from an application to a plugin, you can't have your application ID in here, and they make this by default. So let's go ahead and rip that out so it's no longer there. Hit Control S. We can sync our Gradle and let it build and do its thing, and then we'll go ahead and rebuild it just to make sure that everything's okay, because if you click build 7 times, it usually works pretty well. And from here, we can go ahead and open up our project, so our little hello world project here, and we can go into our app, into our build, into our outputs, into our AARs, and here is our app AAR. Now, from here, we have ourselves a AAR file, right? And we need to build some kind of file for Godot to understand what this file is. And Godot has built a system so that we can kind of describe what is this AAR file to Godot. And it kind of gives it its metadata, if that makes sense. And what that file is called a GDAP file. Click on here, type CMD, and I'm going to go ahead and type code dot. You guys probably can't see it, but I'm typing code dot. And what that's going to do is it's going to open up Visual Studio into this directory. So that way I actually have Visual Studio here to code in. Now, Visual Studio doesn't really know how to work with a GDAP file, so it's not really going to be super helpful, so you don't have to use Visual Studio. I just am very accustomed to Visual Studio. So what we can do is we can go ahead and click New File and make it a text file, which is simple enough, and we will go ahead and start writing out our GDAP file here. So we'll go ahead and do our 2 little braces here. We will type config. We'll hit enter. We'll type name is equal to, and in our case, it's hello world, right? And that name should match the name that we described inside of, if I go find it, inside of our manifest here, it should match our name here. So we just want to make sure it matches. For our next section, we have binary underscore type is equal to, in our case, local, because it is not a externally facing AAR file. It's not something we have to go fetch out on the internet, right? And then we can say binary is equal to, and we have to go with the name of our AAR file, which in our case, if I go ahead and I open up our project here, you can see it's app debug AAR. Now we could name this whatever we want, but in my case, I'll just stick with it, app debug AAR. And down here, we can go ahead and add any dependencies. Now, this section is really important. We're not going to use it for our case because we don't really need it, but this is where you can bundle in libraries that your project might need. So for instance, if you're integrating some kind of Java library that you might need, you could just fetch out to Maven with this and just pull that data down. And how you do that is you can go ahead and add in dependencies such as local is equal to open brace, close brace. And then from here, you just give it a local path. Or if you're looking for more of like a remote, you can say remote and you could pass in a remote path. Or you could do something like custom underscore maven underscore repos is equal to, and you can just pass in whatever your Maven repo would be. So for instance, if you were pulling back like the add colony, right, you could say quote https:// add colony dot bintray.com/add colony. And that would actually pull down the add colony Maven repo jar file into your project. Now we don't need this, but I'm just showing you guys so that way you guys have it. Now I'm going to get rid of this, but that's how you would add in a Maven repo if you need it. So we're going to go ahead and save this, and it's going to pop up and ask us what we want to call it. And in our case, I'm going to go ahead and call it hello world.gdap. And that's going to make it into a GDAP file. So now if I go out to my AAR, I have everything that I need to make this work inside of Godot. So now we can go ahead and copy this, and we can go ahead and open up our Godot project here. And we can go ahead and click new project and call it Hello World Demo Plugin. And I'm going to go ahead and create and edit that. And I'll have to resize this for you guys as always. So let me do that. And we'll go ahead and go to our project. We'll install our Android build template. And then we will go ahead and right click on our RES, open in File Manager, go into our Android, go into our plugins, paste in our plugin, go back into Godot, and it should auto detect it. And now from here, we can go to Project, Export, add in our Android template, go into Custom Build, and you will see that we have our Hello World plugin. We can actually go ahead and click on, and that will add it to our project. So now we can see plugins/Hello World. So if we click close, we go to our 2D scene, we right click it, attach a script, and let's call it hello world.gd. Now from here, we need to load in our plugin. So we can do that like we do with most of our stuff. We can actually say, in our case, var hello world, and I'm going to come down here and say hello world is equal to engine.get singleton, and the name is going to be hello world. Simple enough. Now we also need to connect our signals, okay? And connecting our signals can be a little complicated here. So what we can do is we can say hello world dot connect, and we will need to pass in our signal, right? So if we come back to our little Android project here, we can open up our little class here and take a look at our signals. You can see we have test signal. So let's go ahead and do that. So test signal, comma, self, comma, and we will say quote on underscore test signal. And let's tell it to come here and say func on test signal. And I believe it passes in a string. So we'll pass in a data parameter, let's say, and we will go ahead and just print our data. And I'm going to save that real quick. Simple enough. Now, if we want to call our function to go ahead and print out our data, we can just do that up here. So we'll just say hello world dot, and we need to look at what our function is here. So in our case, it is get hello. So we'll go ahead and copy that, and we'll say get hello, and we'll go ahead and print that data. Simple enough. And that's basically everything that we need to do. So I'm going to grab my Android phone, I'm going to plug it in, and we're going to test this and debug if there's any problems. All right, so now that my phone's plugged in, let's go ahead and hit play. We're going to select current so that our current scene is our scene, and it's going to build. And I'm going to go ahead and open up a command prompt right here, and I'm going to go ahead and type adb log cat. And if you haven't done this, go ahead and check out my Android debugging tutorial. It kind of goes over all of this and allows us to, see this stuff. Now you can see here we do have an error, and it says, hey, you need to have a minimum SDK of 19, and you need to either increase your project to 23 or you need to reduce the other one to 19. Now, this is my fault, and that's because for some reason I thought that we needed to do 23, but we actually need to do 19. So we can either come into our Android Studio, go into our build, and go ahead and change this from 23 to 19, or we can go to Godot, go to project, export, and then come down here to our minimum SDK and make it 23. If I remember correctly, that's the one we're doing. So we'll go ahead and export this out with 23 and see how it goes. Okay, so it looks like we have an error here. So you can see here it's saying, hey, what went wrong, right? We have a build failure. Execution failed for task process debug resources. So it's trying to pull some resources. And this is a very common problem I've noticed with this method of creating a plugin. Now, something that I've noticed with this is it's actually trying to pull some color here, ATTR color secondary, ATTR color primary, and it's trying to pull back some kind of resources or something like that for your project. And you can see transformed app debug res values XML. Now, the reason why it's doing this is if we go back to our Android project here and we open up our hello world, and you can see that we have a res file right here. Now, if we open this up, you can see we have drawable value, and you can see we have colors and strings and themes and MIP maps and drawing, right? This is all stuff that has to do with you being an application, not with you being a library. So we can just go ahead and click on these, delete them, and kick them right out of the project and get rid of them. Now, if we go ahead and we build this, and you'll see the build will take a few seconds. And then we go over to our plugins folder and we go to our AAR folder here. I make sure I refresh 8:41 p.m. That's correct for me. So we'll go ahead and copy this and paste it and replace our files. Now, if we go ahead and go back to Godot here, hit OK, and then rebuild, this should fix the problem. So let's let that run and let's see what it does. Awesome. So it is now running on our phone. So if I open up ADB Logcat, I go ahead and I copy this and I open up Visual Studio Code and I go ahead and I paste in this log file here and I type in log. If I hit Control F Godot, and I know I could probably do it with a _F Godot, or I think it's _L Godot. I think I cover it in one of my videos. But if I kind of come up here and I go up, let's see if we can see our prints here. Or if we have an error perhaps. All right, so first, attempted to connect to non-existent signal, node test signal. So that's not a good sign at all. Let's see if we can find, we did get back hello world, so that's cool. So we did get our print. So our plugin did load, but for some reason our signal did not get connected. You can see here that our signal did not get connected at all. Attempted to connect to non-existent signal, test signal, on node 2D on test signal. So test signal does not seem to be working. So let's go back to our Android project here and let's see what's going on. So in our signal, we called it test signal, test signal. Oh, I figured out what's going on. I'm not returning my signals. That's completely my fault. So we'll go ahead and return our signals. Oh, you guys are probably yelling at me in the comments. You're probably screaming at your screen. So there we go. So now from here, we can say, hey, get hello signal. And what we'll do is we will say return our string s. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to call this function here. And we're just going to say, this is our test signal. And I spelled signal wrong as usual. And let's go ahead and recompile this and see if that works. So we'll go ahead and build this. I can't believe I forgot to return our signal. Oh my goodness, I feel stupid, but that's okay. So we got a build successful. So let's go ahead, open up our AAR, open up our plugins. Let's copy our debug AAR in here, and we can name it whatever we want later. And we'll go ahead and open up Godot. We'll hit play, and then we'll go ahead and open up our command prompt, and let's see if we get our callbacks. So we should see our signal come back first, and then our hello world come back after that. Actually, it looks like our signal came back afterwards, but that's okay. We actually got back all of our stuff. Awesome. So let's go ahead and use this to do something interesting. At this point, you guys can drop off the tutorial and you guys probably won't lose anything, but I just wanted to see if we could get something more interesting in our little plugin. So let's go ahead and make it so that we can do a little bit of sharing or something like that in our project, right? So what we can do is we can actually come in here and say, all right, instead of get hello, let's go ahead and make a new function here. And let's say public void, and we'll go ahead and share some text. So we'll say share text. And we're going to pass in a string for us to share, right? And it'll be just our text, right? That we're going to be sharing. So from here, what we can do is we can go ahead and try to share some text. Now, to share text, you need to go ahead and use the Godot sharing system. So we need to do some intent stuff. So we can type in intent. Intent is equal to a new intent, right? And we need to pass in our intent, which is going to be Android dot content dot intent dot action send. And we're going to go ahead and attempt to action send something, okay? And from here, we can go ahead and just say intent dot set type to our text slash plain. And we're basically just telling Godot our intent is to send some text, basically. So now from here, we can say intent dot put extra, and we can say intent dot extra underscore text. And we're basically just saying, hey, we want to send some text. And in our case, we'll just send text. Now, from here, what we can do is we can go ahead and just start that share, right? And to do that, we need to go ahead and get an activity of some kind. So let's come up here to our top of our little class here. And let's say private activity, and we'll go ahead and import that. So let's go ahead and import the activity class up here. So you can see we now have our Android app activity class. And if we come down here, we can go ahead and just attempt to share our text through our activity. So we'll say activity dot start activity, and we'll pass in our intent. So intent dot create chooser intent, comma, and then we can pass in just some words here. So we'll just say test, right? Simple enough. Now, this will not work unless we get our activity from Godot. So we need to set our activity here. And Godot actually gives us the ability to do that just by pulling it. So we'll just go ahead and come in here and say activity is equal to Godot.getActivity. There we go. And just to let you guys know, activity is basically what your user interface is. It's basically one screen from the user interface, or like the main running function of your component, right? So from here, we should be able to call this and share some text. Now, it may or may not work, but we can try and see what it does. Because to be honest with you, I've never done this without somebody else's add-on, so I guess we'll see. So we'll go ahead and add share text up here. We'll come over to our Godot. We'll go ahead and tell it to attempt to share text. So we'll say hello world dot, and in our case, I believe it's called share text. So share text. And we'll pass in test text. All right. So now if we try to run this on our Android device, let's see what it does. Well, I'm going to venture to say it didn't work because all I have is a gray screen. So let's take a look and see. Script error, non-existent function, share text. Probably I didn't build it because I'm an insane person. So let's see if that works, because I completely forgot to build my AAR file. So let's go ahead and replace that. And let's go back here. Let's hit play. And whoops, I did not mean to hit play. Let's hit Android icon here, and let's see what it's going to do. And it did activate our share. Awesome. I did not expect that to work. So if I go ahead and I click on Twitter here, you can see that it looks like I'm doing a direct message. I guess I'll just do it to myself. And you will see that I get test text. Simple enough. So that's basically how you can interact with your Android system using Android Studio with Godot. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, you know, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button, because I'm here to make content for you guys. Now, this video was a viewer suggestion, so if you have a suggestion, please leave it in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to get to it. And hey, if you have any questions or any comments, please leave them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. Or you can jump onto our Discord and hit me up and I'll be more than happy to chat with you about anything. But that is all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.